Okay. All right. What's up? This is Ian Koloski. Ian, say hello.
Hey guys, what's up?
So he got a placement with us this past month with his track Bahrain. And yeah, we're gonna go through his writing process, just his story and like all of that stuff. Talk about your artist project, kind of next steps that you're taking in music and sync, and all that. So yeah, kind of just wanted to start off, really kind of just talking about your story because you're originally from Pennsylvania, but you moved.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm from a little town outside of Pittsburgh called Elwood City, which I'm sure nobody's ever heard of.
I have not heard of Elwood City.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then I've been living in Prague for the past, more than 10 years at this point. Like now I just work and live out of Prague. It's, up until 2 weeks ago, it was a great place to travel from around Europe and whatnot. Now it
Sure,
doesn't
yeah.
look like that anytime soon.
Yeah, I've traveled there before, and it's just like the cheapest everything. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as much as it used to be, but definitely the cheapest in Europe for sure.
Okay, cool. So wait, when did you end up moving there?
It's about I guess about 18 years ago almost at this point.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's
But
crazy.
it wasn't like I just moved here. It was like I started coming here so often that I was like, at some point I was like, I think I live here now. So I guess I'll change my address.
So like what mainly attracted you to it, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, when I came here touring with the band I was in, and we, just some little band, but we managed to come here and
What was the name?
I liked it. I'm not even gonna mention it. Nobody ever heard of it.
I've been to those bands too, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, I made some friends. I liked Europe in general. It was my first ever experience leaving the States and just,
Cool.
being on my own. I was like 18, So it was cool. And at some point I was living in Virginia and one of the dudes in the band was like, the band broke up, of course, and the dude was like, "Hey man, let's get out of here." I was like, "Yeah, let's go to LA finally." And he's like, "What about if we go back to Prague?" I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So we ended up coming back to Prague. He's been long gone, but I'm still here. So, but I've been doing good here. I got a little thing here now. This is my studio, if you see.
Yeah, it's dope.
Stuff. So it's like I got a nice little life happening here. So now at this point, it's hard to kind of uproot, even though I've had those thoughts of like maybe I should go to LA. Now it doesn't even look like I'm allowed to leave this country for 2 years, probably.
Well, what's kind of funny, and like, just me as a producer, like I talked to a bunch of artists or my producer friends, and I'm sure you've had the same conversation of like, back in the 80s and 90s, yeah, it was 100% location was absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I think location can help, but it's definitely not the first 90% of whatever your problem is.
For sure. Honestly, I kind of like, for years I thought, nah, fuck it, I'm good here in Prague. I hope we can say fuck on this show.
Oh, you can say fuck, shit, fuck.
All right.
This is, you know what? If somebody doesn't like bad words, I don't think they'll particularly like anything that I'm doing.
If somebody doesn't like bad words, they shouldn't work in music, basically.
I would have to agree. So please fucking continue. So
yeah. So anyway, like, a few years ago, I was like, no, I'm cool here. I got a nice thing happening. But what I started to realize, honestly, was like, and why I've been more recently thinking about LA is because when I'm sitting around here, I get the call because I work in the music business here in Czech, with like big people, known artists here. And I was thinking, man, if I was in LA and it was the same level of artist, it might not be Bruno Mars, but it's probably still going to might be Anderson .Paak, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like just like that idea of like being around to get the call. It's like, oh, Ian's good, he's probably around, maybe we can give him a call to get in on this session, that kind of thing. So like that kind of idea has made me think, man, maybe it would be cool to be somewhere like Nashville, LA, New York, That's it, really.
But that's right. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm in Charlotte and I lived in New York before. I'm out in Nashville all the time. And what's funny is like the fact of the matter is in music, if you're making it work anywhere, firstly, you'd probably be fine anywhere.
Yeah.
And secondly, like, you did it, you know?
Yeah. I
So-
totally agree. I mean, it was like the hardest step is to go from not being a professional to being one. You know, all the other steps
exactly.
are way easier, you know?
Yeah, everything else at that point is just semantics and, just overall strategy. So,
Mhm.
if it's kind of funny because I've had friends that move out to, um, LA or New York, and it made a lot of sense for them at the time because they were already doing some label stuff. And they're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll go out because I already have those connections. I'm being flown out all the time anyways.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes more sense for me to be there. So then they just get a lot more
Yeah.
versus people who move there to solve that problem. Okay, I'm going to get in the label stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's like even less leverage because you had so much connects back in your hometown,
Right. Right.
So
there's yeah, it's all that fill-in business you get,
yeah,
because like all my friends here are musicians, so basically, of course, they all come to me for
you're
everything.
the guy.
Yeah. So it's that. And I mean, like this business, like basically any business, you call the guy that has to be good, of course, but it's more the guy that and you can hang out with for 12 hours in a room,
If you're a good person, you know what you're doing and you are ethical with people, you're going to have a career in this. Like it's as simple as that. You just keep going,
Yeah.
So, let's kind of talk, shifting kind of like more to, you in sync and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, okay, firstly, the song that you wrote for, this was, I think, what, TP 123, was it?
Yeah, I don't remember the number, but that's
it's all
right.
numbers. That's but world music track, everything sounded just super incredibly authentic. Like it was just so dope. Buyer got back to us immediately and we're like, definitely this. So,
Awesome.
what was your, no, absolutely. What was your kind of take behind the whole thing? Like, what was your approach? How are you approaching music in general? Because I know you have an artist project as well. So, this is not your artist project. So how do you kind of balance between being an artist and then being I'm writing for hire, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, I think I look at sync stuff as more like me as a producer. And I've always like a problem kind of I've had over my career with music is when I would release music, like back when people would release albums, I would release a whole album with a band and everybody's like, yeah, but everything sounds so different. I was like, well, that's cool, right? And they're like, yeah, but we don't know what your style is because everything's so different. So I've always really liked doing different stuff. So that's why I like sync so much. And that's why I'm really, want to push it harder because, you can step out of yourself as an artist in a way. And I like to do that, kind of like look at something almost more analytical in that way. And so like for this particular track, basically I have at least heard Middle Eastern music and Arabic music. I've been to the Middle East a couple times for gigs. That was cool. And so I was like, somewhat aware of some things. And I had some kind of ideas of like, if somebody's looking for this kind of thing, like what those key elements are probably going to be. And for me, almost with everything, it's almost always about the beat and the rhythms first. I almost always start with drums, always. So in this case, basically I started playing around with like Kontakt and seeing what kind of like ethnic kind of, samplers I had and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I found some basic stuff. And I'm always about with sounds. I just stack layers. So
really?
Anytime you hear my stuff, it's always usually like 3 or 4 layers of stuff to make.
So like kind of go into that more, if you could. Like, so are you, when you're stacking, anything, whether it's drums, like I stack drums all the time, especially in like, because I mainly produce like indie pop, synth pop stuff. So I'm always
that's what I do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you have to stack everything. So like, how are you stacking everything with this? Yeah.
With this, like basically with this, I mean, I found like kind of like the candy drums of like the, the high, like, I don't know if anybody has access to hear it. Maybe you'll post it, but like the kind of like the loose sounding drums.
Yeah.
I kind of use that as like a,
why don't we do this? We're gonna play the song real quick so everybody who's listening can hear it, and then we'll come back and then. All right, cool. So we're gonna play the song now.
So if you listen to it, basically like the drums on top, the candy, and kind of like the color is one thing, but then I have like the stronger beat. It's just very simple. It's just like a, you know. So like I use like I stack almost like on a level of like EQ, where I'll have like one thing, you know, holding down the subs, you know, usually something as like a snare kind of thing, and then the other stuff is kind of more stereo and you know, playing around and looser. And I'm also, when I do most stuff, I'm careful not to over quantize, because I think people could get, you know, into that. I mean, in some genres, of course, it's just it's the sound. But like with a lot of stuff I do, and especially stuff like this track that you just heard, is like a bit acousticy. So I don't want it to be too quantized and overly on the grid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, humans are naturally, you know, they sound more natural because, you know, like we're a little sloppy and stuff. So if everything's super lined up, it can take rid of or get rid of that authenticity. That makes any sense?
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, I also try to play stuff when I can, you know, or when I think it suits, you know, like guitars. I play guitar as my best instrument. I play a little bit of keys, but, you know, I'm not a good keyboard player, piano player.
Sure.
But so if there's guitars, or I'll play some percussion acoustically and stuff like that. So I try to like inject in everything I do, especially for sync kind of, if it calls for it to do something more recorded and less just sampled and less MIDI, if I can.
So
if it works, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. It has to make sense. I mean, you can't be forcing it. So, like for this track, for example, how long did it take for you to like at least come up with kind of the demo sound, if that makes any sense?
Well, I always, if I can, and a lot of these pitches like yours that you send out are like, a lot of them in the past have been really like, hey, we need this in like, you know, 12 hours. You know?
Yeah.
So in that case, you know, often it's like if you happen to have something already that might fit or something like that. But like in this case, it was a bit longer, and I unfortunately misread the brief in the beginning, so I didn't realize it was the next Wednesday. I thought it was like tomorrow, and so I got pretty late. But so this one I spent probably 4 or 5 hours on, I think.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
So I think that's relatively quick. But what I usually like to do is like break it up into 2 days, where I'll spend one day with like the tracking, writing, and tracking part, and then mix it the next day. And usually mixing for me involves a lot of deleting, you know. I usually throw everything that might be cool, and then when I go back to mix, I'll take a lot of stuff away, if nothing else, to just like make better dynamics, you know.
Oh, I love it. So it's definitely you kind of use always, even with production, more of a subtractive method, just kind of always taking out when you can.
Yeah, I mean, I love minimalism. It's like I've been like preaching to everybody about Billie Eilish for almost 3 years, you know.
Sure.
And of course, now I'm not cool for doing it, but you know.
Well, you can still preach Seb Deliza, because that was her era.
Yeah. So I loved the production. When I first heard Billie Eilish being a producer, I was like, man, this sounds so cool. And it's like almost nothing there, and this girl's whispering into a microphone. And I would love to be able to do that, but I feel like I'm not a good minimalist, although I always try.
Sure.
You know, it's hard. Minimalism is a hard skill to master.
I've kind of, because we both, you know, produce a lot of synth pop and indie pop stuff. I've always noticed all my friends who are super minimal write the top 40, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. That's why I do indie pop.
It's crazy. But yeah, so I mean, I try to be as subtractive as possible. I mean, I really try to, because a lot of times, I mean, I think letting the instrument have space, you can make it sound better. Whereas like, obviously, if there's a lot of stuff in a mix, nothing can sound that big, because there has to be space for everything else, you know? So I think that's why I like minimalism. You know, you can make a voice sound bigger if there's not a big production under it. You know, if you look at Lorde from a few years back.
Oh man, Pure Heroin.
Yeah, I love that album. And
Joe Little. Ooh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love that album. I was like, that was my first, like, you know, I'm a grown man. It's like, man, I'm listening to this 16-year-old girl. I can't tell anybody. And now I almost exclusively listen to 16-year-old girls.
Yeah, you know what? They just have the best records. Like it's like Chris Zane, Joel Little, Couple other producers in that vein, it's just always, you know, power pop girls are always fronting it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Churches is like the one example of they're producing everything themselves, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, love it. Anyway, so let's kind of veer more towards your artist project, because Sync is just one thing that you're doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this actually before we go into
Okay.
your artist project. Like, so you're doing Sync. You say you
Yeah.
produce a lot of people in Prague. You know,
Yeah.
what's, you know, just being full time in music. You know, the
Mhm.
studio looks sick. What's your what are you doing all day sort of stuff? Like, I mean, you're writing with a
Yeah.
bunch of people, you're killing it. So like,
Thanks.
I'm sure a lot
Uh,
of people want to be full timing it. So yeah, like what's your thing? Like, what are all the things, you know?
yeah. I mean, basically, I'm kind of like all of the above, in the sense of like, again, up until 2 weeks ago, I've been playing like pub gigs, like 4 to 5 nights a week.
Sure.
Produce in the all day. When I say produce, it's like that could be writing Sync, that could be like working on my own stuff, that could be working with a different artist. So it's
Sure.
basically I divided into live and studio. So basically, I would do studio all day, gigs all night. Unfortunately, since I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's a global pandemic, and
I think we've all heard.
yeah, the country I'm in was one of the first and most hardcore to just shut everything down instantly.
Really?
Which is working, by the way, just so you know. It's like
That's
it's
great.
really going well here.
That's good to hear.
However, everything's closed. All gigs are canceled.
Yeah.
For the indefinite future. So I'm obviously not depending on a lot of live gigs coming in soon, as far as
Sure.
money goes. So basically, what I do is, I mean, Sync is one of those things where I kind of do it when I don't have anything else in front of my face, or if like something from you comes, for example, a pitch that I can say, okay, I can focus for the next 2 days on this. And
Exactly. Yeah.
of course, the thing with Sync is obviously you just never really know, and
You never know. Yeah.
It's not a gig where you show up, you play the gig, and you get paid, and you go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
like,
I mean, yeah, because we the past couple of years we've been running this. It's like that's kind of been the biggest thing, and like that's just in Sync. It's like you never know. So cool thing is that we've actually started working with a couple different set of buyers. So we'll know, including for this one. I mean, we know basically within about a week or two. So that's all about to change, which is great.
That's really cool. That's amazing. If that exists in Sync, that's amazing.
It doesn't, and that's why it took 2 years to negotiate this deal.
Yeah.
So but I totally understand. Sync is kind of like one of those. I get it. Yeah. Man. So you're producing a lot as well, or?
Yeah. So basically, I work with a lot of artists here. I've been actually over the past couple of years, I've tried to narrow it down a bit, to be honest with you, because I was just in the beginning. When you start being able to work, you don't say no a lot, and you take what comes your way.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity, a brilliant opportunity. I've worked with lots of big artists here on labels and whatnot. To toot my own horn a little bit, I got my first.
Let's toot it, bro.
We got my first platinum record last year, which was amazing. Yeah, thank you. And as a producer, and it was working with a big established Czech artist, and it was on a major label and all that here, but all that's smaller here, and it wasn't like a huge number, but
let's not die it down. It's amazing. Mazel tov. We are all proud of you. That's so cool. Seriously, that's really badass.
So, I mean, getting those opportunities was amazing. But for that record, for example, it was so much work. I mean, it was so much work because the band it's a 6-member band. Plus, they did this collaboration with a horn orchestra. So, like,
oh, wow.
I did everything. There's smaller budgets here. So there was no budget for other engineers. I mean, I recorded it from scratch, like every person, mixed it, mastered it, everything. I did everything on that record. So I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of being able to hang the plaque here in my studio. But it was so much work that it kind of like really turned me off to like doing those kind of big projects anymore.
Sure.
And it was an album, and it was like 14 songs on it. So I mean, I was just gone, in it for so long that I was like, man, I don't even think I ever want to do another record with somebody. I just want to do like songs, I don't.
How long did it take?
I mean,
from closing it, like to originally starting it to,
I mean, it was like, it was at least 6 months, but that's not to say it was like 6 months every day. But when I was there, so there was like, cause they're touring, and of course everybody makes their money on the road these days. So they would have to like go tour, and it's small tour. So it's more like go for 4 days, come back, go for 4 days, come back.
It's more like within the EU.
Yeah. Within Czech, really. Czech.
Okay. Gotcha.
They sing in the local language which doesn't, cross borders well.
Sure.
So anyway, but it was like at least 6 months, maybe even a year, all said and done. But the last, like when I got to like, okay, it's all tracked, and then it was just me mixing and mastering. I was like, it's like these songs had like 150 to 180 channels per song. You know what I mean? And you have to do something with every channel. You know what I mean?
The one record I ever had, the most tracks we had for one song, I think was 157. And
so this was like a whole album of that.
God.
This is a whole album of that. And then like edit it and clean up everything, because it was all live, and even like, we did multiple takes on everything. I mean, there was something like 18 or 22 tracks just of the acoustic drum kit.
Oh my God.
And it was like, the classic, amazing drummer, by the way. He's my favorite drummer I've ever recorded.
That's why he gets 28.
But he had all these drums, and I was like, hey man, you're really gonna play like this tom on this song, because we don't need to like have it here. He's like, oh yeah, definitely. Of course he didn't. But so it's like also that was like going through the drum tracks and like, okay, we can delete this channel. Okay, we can delete this channel, because if you're recording a live drum kit, if you have a mic on a tom, there's
just in the background.
Anyway, to like getting off subject, but like basically that made me want to do more like single style work with people, do EPs and that kind of thing. So that's what I've been trying to do for the last more year. And I've got a couple artists I work with, like a little stable. I mean, almost 100% of my business is just repeat business at this point. That's great. I rarely work with new people, which I would like to, but it's like, there's like that rotation of by the time this guy's finished, then this guy's calling and that sort of thing, which is awesome. And I'm grateful, but.
Well, I mean, for people listening and stuff, I mean, how, for instance, because you have repeat business, you're full-time producing and writing, and, killing it, you got a damn plaque, so what, how long does it take, for you? I mean, I have a different story than everybody. You have a different story than everybody, but like for you, because you moved to Czech.
Yeah.
And, obviously you kind of started over there, I would imagine, because you were in Virginia or Pennsylvania before.
I mean, with my career as a producer, for sure, 100% I started.
Yeah. So like, how long did it take to kind of really build up that client base as a producer? Yeah.
I mean, a long
doesn't
time.
have to be exact.
Definitely the first like 3 or 4 years was just more like, oh, cool, I got a project. And of course it started with me doing like, just finding like, I was playing live a lot. So the other guys that would play live, it's almost like stand-up comedians where you all hang out. It's like everybody knows each other. And I actually owned a bar for a little bit.
Here. Oh, really?
And we had music there. I would play there all the time, and lots of people would play there. So I would play my band's record that I've produced in the bar.
That's awesome.
Of course, just as part of the playlist. And like this one guy who was just like this absolute phenomenal genius, when you'd see him live, was like, hey man, is that you? And I was like, yeah. He's like, and you recorded that? I was like, yeah, man. He's like, wow, that sounds great. And he's just so amazing live. But then I heard his recordings that he had at the time. I was just like, dude, this is horrible. I was like, it was almost surprising to me that anybody could make him sound that bad.
Sure.
And so I was like, and then so like, after a couple of drinks, I'm like, man, I had sworn off working with artists for a different reason. I was living in Germany for a little bit and working in a studio as an engineer, just, as the house engineer. So I was just recording bad rappers.
Yeah. Listen, I think every producer who's full-timing had that experience in the studio, assisting on terrible records. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had basically just given up, and I was like, man, I'm not going to just work with artists anymore. But then this guy was just so good. And I was like, man, you just got to let me help you out. Let me do a record. It's like, I don't even want money. And he's like, he insisted to pay me, and we worked out, a really cheap price, but like, it was like, I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And basically from that record, literally every job I've ever gotten has been from that. Because
Really?
he's really good, really well respected in the community here. He's an English guy, but he's lived in Prague forever. And so like people would hear his record and then call me. And like it was like I had honestly just done his record because I wanted to help him out because I thought he wasn't getting a fair shake in the studio. So I wanted to help him out. And then another band called me and another band called me. And then like a band I was working with called like the manager from the big band who I got the plaque from happened to be talking to that band and he liked my work. So he introduced me to the band. They have a nice studio. I did some other work for other bands from them. And I thought, oh man, this might lead to me working with them in a couple of years. And it was like 2 months in and they're like, hey, so we're doing a new record. And it was their first record after 10 years. So it was like, it really worked out, except for how much work it was.
Totally. So,
the whole roundabout process from then till now has been at least 6 or 7 years.
Wow, that's great. So, so you were doing a lot of these records, with a bunch of people. And then, so going back to your personal project, like your solo project.
Yeah.
So, did you kind of have, I always refer to it to a lot of my friends or like clients, like having a fuck it moment where you're just like, you know what, I need to be focused on whatever I'm truly passionate about or whatever. What was your moment where you were like, you know what, I really need to start investing more into my solo project? Because you're starting to put out a lot more material.
I mean, honestly, it's just like that kind of like deep, internal look of like, it's a weird thing, my whole life I was like, man, I just want to be a pro in music, and then I got there. So it's like, I haven't had a non-music job. I couldn't even tell you when I had a different job besides music. But then I was like, man, why am I like not really happy still? Why am I still complaining about shit? Why am I still, bitter about shit? And I was like, honestly, everything I've ever done has always been about, I wanted to make cool music, I mean, that sounds simplistic, but I learned how to play the guitar because I wanted to write cool songs. I started doing gigs and I even did cover gigs because I just wanted to like get people to listen to my music. And I only had 3 songs. So I have to like fill the set or whatever. And everything has been about that. And then like at some point, when you decide to go pro, it's hard to not just chase money because, it's hard to make money and you need it when you're a grown up. And so I got into like, okay, this pays more. This will pay me more. And I do these gigs and this pays good and this pays good. And I was like, it's like, yeah, I'm making some money now, but like, I still feel the same, it's like, sure. I didn't sacrifice so much to have a career in music to still not be happy about it,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
was it. And it's like, my ultimate goal has always been to have a career where I connected to people with my music. And I haven't been doing that. I've been helping other people make cool stuff. And I like that a lot. And I've been doing gigs, like I do like cover gigs even to make money. And it's like, I enjoy it to some extent, but like I'll have a cover gig and, have 200 people screaming in a room. And I'm like, yeah, that was nice, and it's like, and it's just like, I was like losing the kind of focus. And so I've had bands, of course, I have tons of music out, but I've always had bands and whatnot. And it never quite sounded right to me,
Sure.
Because even though I wrote it all and I produced it all, I was still writing for the band. Let's say we have these members. So like, oh, this guy plays this guy plays this. So I'm going to write these parts like for that. So with solo is actually just freedom for me. And it's, I can do whatever, there doesn't have to be a guitar in it. There doesn't have to be acoustic drums in it. There doesn't have to be this. There doesn't have to be that. I can just do whatever I want,
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. And I've always been like this closet pop lover. And I've always been in rock bands, you know what I mean? So that's also another thing. It's like I've always been in rock bands and I've really just loved pop. And I'd be like, like a few years ago, hey man, did you hear this album by Lorde? It's amazing. They're like, like acapella with a drum machine, you know what I mean? I'm like,
well, you hit me up anytime because that's, I mean, we're talking Kids of 88, Naked and Famous, like the old New Zealand type of crew. And then you have the real cool shit that came out of Boston and New York. So I am totally hip to everything indie pop and synth pop. So you hit me up anytime.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna
Aside
call
from
you
this
pretty
interview
soon to
thing.
go on tour with me as a drummer.
Bro, I am totally down. I got all the backing tracks already ready, man. You know what? We got
Nice,
it already done.
nice.
So, you have a song, you said you have a song coming out next month or something, or?
Yeah, I just released my first ever single as a solo artist.
Awesome. All right. We're going to have the
last-
link below. So make sure to click on that, support
Cool.
our bro. All right.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so and basically I kind of delayed that for a while because I wanted to make sure that once I released my first single, I wasn't going to stop, so I could just relentlessly release music. And so I was actually planning on releasing tomorrow, but you know, who predicts a pandemic? So things got a little bit delayed.
Yeah.
So it's going to be next week. The song's like basically ready. I just, want to make sure I do some amount of promo, and I had a plan for a video, and of course that's all canceled because I can't even meet the video guy. We're on real serious lockdown over here.
You know what? For anybody listening to this, about 35 minutes ago when we started, when Ian and I started talking, North Carolina, where I live, declared the shelter in place. So he's actually the first person I'm talking to, and I can't leave my apartment. So, we can walk the dog, but that's about it. So.
I'm very lucky. Another lucky thing I have is like my apartment is basically 30 seconds walk from this studio. So I'm very lucky there. So I can at least come here, and I'm 2 stories underground in Prague. So I should be safe.
So yeah, the studio is what? It's how does that work? It's just in a. Is it like a?
I'm just renting. Basically, I'm renting a basement space. It's actually
so dope.
I used to own a bar, as I mentioned a little bit ago, and the bar was on the ground floor of this building. So I had a relationship with the landlord, and so like years after we sold the bar, she always used to talk about, oh, there's a pub in the basement. There's a pub in the basement. So I was looking for a new space. I was like, called her up and said, hey, can I check out that pub in the basement? I came down here. I was like, yeah, this could work. So I have a full bar here with beer taps and everything.
What?
Yeah.
That is so dope. I don't have that in my studio, but whatever. We got Perrier, bro.
Oh, nice. It's definitely a drinking culture over here. So
yeah, I've been to Prague once, and that's absolutely what was experienced. But typically in Europe in general, seems to be. I mean, I guess it's just there's so much drinking in general, but I can't burp, so I don't even drink beer.
Yeah.
So if I don't have a gin or a gin and tonic, I basically can't drink because I literally can't burp.
Like you actually physically can't burp.
I literally can't burp. Any That Pitch members, just so you guys know, I can't burp. So
that's
your fearless leader, Mark, literally can't burp. So it's yeah, man, gas attack, bro.
Yeah, I don't drink beer actually, but it's definitely a beer culture here. And it's like, I mean, I think like what the differences here to America is, I think in America it's like drinking with a purpose, which is to get drunk, where here is just drinking as part of all things. I actually have a kid. I have a 5-year-old kid. Thanks. Whenever we go to like kids events, they still serve beer and wine. Like, yeah, like we go to the playground after school, like 80% of the parents will have a glass of wine or something on the playground.
Oh my God. Wow.
It's amazing.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is.
Well, yeah, probably any of our homies who are recovering, this is not a good section of
Yeah. Don't move to Prague.
Don't move to Prague. All right, so we have the link down below. You have a song coming out soon, so we're gonna link to all the things, your Instagram, etc. Definitely, guys, friend Ian, he's the best. This is actually the first time we're talking, and I feel like we're brothers at this point, so this is great.
We got to start rehearsals if we can ever leave our house again.
Well, listen, I mean, we're using this Zoom thing to talk, so I guess we can figure out a way so my drums aren't absolutely destroying the mic. Last thing, and this is kind of, I guess kind of we're setting the precedent of like what every artist is asked now that we can actually be publicly claiming a lot of these placements. We're working, just anybody listening, we're working with a lot more tech companies, a lot more catalog buyers. They're a lot less political than a lot of the supervisors we've worked with in the past. They're great people. There's just politics at play. And a lot of our buyers that we're working with currently are not political whatsoever. So we can claim literally everything now. So we're going to be doing between like 10 and 30 of these a month or so.
Right.
Yeah, which is great. So I'm kind of, thinking of like, and anybody who wants to ask particular questions, always comment below. But, I think something that we should always leave with is like, if there, a lot of people here are independent artists, independent producers, what would be a big piece of advice that you would have for them, approaching their career, not only in sync, but just in music in general? Like if there's a takeaway, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to sound really simplistic, but just don't quit. The easiest way to succeed is not giving up. I mean, that's the only thing that really stops you. I mean, and it's like, as I'm sure you know, and everybody knows that is working in music, is like the amount of no's you get before you get a yes is overwhelming. No's on just getting like the gig at the local bar down the street. I mean, I remember being a kid and trying to book a gig at my first skating rink, and it was like, it was just no. And then once, it's like even with, it's like having sex. It's like the first time you have sex, it's such a big deal. After that, it's really not a big deal anymore. And it's the same thing with everything in music. And it's like, just keep doing it and get good. Get good. Don't be an asshole. That's it.
Oh man, that's
there's always somebody better than you. Like no matter what you do, there's gonna be some 5-year-old kid on YouTube who does it better than you do. So it's like you can only be so good, and you're never gonna be the best. That's just not even a thing that exists in music.
Sure.
But what you can be is a really dependable person. Get stuff done on time. Don't be a dick. Honor your commitments. And if you can't, for whatever reason, honor a commitment, make sure you're very open and communicative with the people you're working with. Why, how you're going to make it up to them and that kind of thing. People are people in the music business like anywhere else.
Ian, this was a joy of mine. This was the highlight of my day. Everybody, all of our members, oh my God, I can't speak. You're the one with wine and I can't speak. All of our members all of our members are super happy that, for you, and that I can already tell that this is helping a lot of people, on their journey in music. So again, everybody, all of his links are below or wherever we have this. And Ian Koloski, thank you so much. You're the bomb.
Thank you, man. And everybody, don't be strangers. I'm just a dude here stuck in my apartment like everybody else now. So get in touch.
Apartment or basement below a bar. So.
Both, either way.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Talk to you later.